Over the last week, we've heard a lot about Brendan Sorsby. We've heard about Texas Tech. We've heard about Cody Campbell. We've heard about Congress, the NCAA, and the future of college sports. But I think most people are asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether Paul Feinbaum is right. The question isn't whether Cody Campbell is right. The question is, who gets a seat at the table? And maybe more importantly, who should?
That the NCAA cannot control anything.
Whether you agree with Paul or not almost misses the point. Because the real question isn't whether the NCAA has lost control. They have. The real question is, if the NCAA isn't controlling the future of college sports, who is? Because influence doesn't disappear, it just moves somewhere else.
I would be just as involved as I am today, regardless of where the position that Texas Tech is in.
A few years ago, most fans had never heard of Cody Campbell. Today, he's one of the most influential voices in all of college sports. Why? Because influence naturally flows towards people willing to fill a vacuum, especially those that are billionaires. When leadership is unclear, people with resources, ideas, and access become more influential. Whether you agree with Cody Campbell isn't really the point. The point is that he's now sitting at a table that didn't really exist a few years ago. And that tells us something important about where power is moving.
I think the Sorsby ruling wasn't really the story this week.
Nope.
The story is that you've got another major decision around college sports that's being decided outside the NCAA and the traditional governance structure. I mean,
Yep.
Who's in charge, guys?
Look at the Sorsby situation. The Big 12 got involved. The NCAA got involved. The courts got involved. State attorneys general got involved. Members of Congress got involved. Everybody seems to have a role, which creates another question. If everybody is involved, who is actually in charge? That's what makes this different from almost every previous era of college sports. Authority is fragmented. Influence is scattered. And everybody seems to be trying to solve the same problem from a different direction.
Kind of like I said before, guys, the governance structure is in college sports is trying to keep up with the economics is like an offensive tackle trying to cover a slot receiver in space, man. You just can't.
Great analogy. Absolutely great analogy.
Ultimately, if you want to understand where college sports is headed, follow the money. Media rights, revenue sharing, NIL, private equity, conference expansion. Almost every major decision traces back to the economics. One of the themes I explored in Agent Confidential is what happens when the economics outgrows the governance structure. Because once the money becomes large enough, the people controlling the economics begin to exert influence over the system. That's not unique to sports. That's true almost everywhere. And that's why the offensive tackle is struggling. The economics changed. The governance structure didn't. While I was recording this episode, the Sorsby situation took another turn. Texas Tech and Brendan Sorsby ultimately parted ways, and he'll now enter the NFL supplemental draft. But in many ways, that proves the point. The story was never really about Brendan Sorsby. The story was about what happens when the economics of college sports moves faster than the governance structure trying to regulate it. The names will change, the schools will change, the facts will change. The underlying dynamics won't. That's why these stories keep happening. So maybe the biggest question facing college sports isn't who wins the next lawsuit, or who wins the next playoff, or who signs the next big NIL deal. Maybe the biggest question is this: can college sports create a governance structure before someone else creates one for them? Because if they don't, somebody else will eventually fill that vacuum. And when they do, they'll get a seat at the table, whether college sports invited them or not. I'm Mike Chaudron, and this is Agent Confidential.